Hello everyone, today I'm taking a look at Soma. What some people do call this game is a horror game, but for me it's more a sci-fi adventure game. And when I first played Soma, two things struck me. One, that, one is based on Toronto, Canada, so that was kind of unusual for a setting. And the second thing is that overall the game itself, there are some stealth sections where you need to be careful, but overall the game kind of feels like an interactive movie, really, wherein once I kind of stop focusing on the gameplay, because I was getting really frustrated that, I have to sneak around, I have to grab all these objects. It's one of these kind of Bioshock games, and I thought it was like Bioshock, and the setting definitely is very similar, but everything else about it is very, very different. And so the basic premise of Soma as a psychological horror game is that, what makes someone human? You have all these different people who have their memories saved on file or their memories stuck on repeat, people who are in comatose bodies, but their minds are active in a machine. And so the question becomes, are the only things that make us who we are our memories? And for some people, absolutely. And for some people, that's up to debate. And so the kind of lore behind Soma is that you play as Simon Jared, who basically goes through this experimental, psyche transplant / copying device, the first of its kind. The idea that you can upload your consciousness to a digital format. And so he goes for this experimental thing, and basically when he wakes up, he's in the future in some robotic body. And so it turns out that his consciousness is actually used as, it was the first successful version of it. And for the commercial version of that software, he was essentially sold as a template consciousness. So when you wake up, you're in this AI robot. You're in this robot, but you are the AI. That's the standard model produced on it. And so suddenly your mind has been transported to this other place. And so Soma takes place deep on the ocean floor, where essentially a bunch of things have gone haywire. And essentially what's occurred is that everything is broken down, lines of communication, the people, the world. And as you go through the story, it turns out that most life on the Earth's surface was wiped out by a meteor strike. And so you were some of the last surviving people deep underwater at this special research facility. And so then, once you realize that almost everyone is gone and there's nothing left on the surface, you decide that the best option for you to go with is essentially there's this project called the Ark, which essentially is this virtual little box which has essentially infinite time on it. You can upload everyone's consciousness to this world, and so basically there's this cannon that can fire the Ark into space where it'd be undisturbed for a possible millennia. And so you decide, okay, well, this is better than nothing. And you and the other woman, who turns out also to be an AI, or at least her consciousness has been uploaded to a robot, decide this is the best course of action. So again, you have these characters you talk to, they have personalities, and really care and grow attached to them. And then at the end of the game, you find out some of them are actually not flesh and bone. They're actually machines with a human mind inside of it. And some of them are suffering, some of them are insane, and some of them are completely fine. And what's really tragic is near the end of the game, you also meet the last human who's actually alive, the last living human. And you kind of have a choice to either kind of put her out of her misery or leave her alone to suffer alone. But yeah, no, once I kind of got out of the whole, stealth mechanic and that this is a video game, this is more a movie, the story went much, much quicker than this. Because, yeah, the gameplay is not super complicated. Yes, there are some pretty decent puzzles in here. Yes, there is also some stealthing, but it really feels more like a walking simulator. A walking simulator that honestly gets a lot better with time. The characters, the stakes, the plot, the situations become a lot more interesting and a lot more engaging. And frankly, the entire game itself, by the time I finished it, I had a much better reception to it than when I had first started. In fact, in the first like 10 minutes, I thought, okay, this is just BioShock, but with like stealth and no weapons. So like, why am I going to bother doing this? And so for the time being, I kind of just, put it down, put it aside, and said, okay, I'm not going to play this. And I picked it up maybe a month later, and I'm really glad I did because, wow, yeah, like it is actually a very impressive story and a very impressive game. Again, there are some decent puzzles, not really a lot of platforming, but there are these sections where you'll be deep underwater and there'll be some ocean current coming through, and you have to like run from pole to pole and find your way through this gigantic storm underwater essentially. And actually my favorite parts of this game are where you have to sneak around and also do puzzles while there are these monsters running about. And it's not really explained what exactly they are. Some of them are, again, like these fleshy kind of machines that have had sea creatures and whatever kind of bind into them and kind of grow on them. And they still have the mind of the person inside of them, but the mind has gone crazy. And so they just chase you down and hurt you. One of the things I kind of got a revelation from this game is that I think in general, and I haven't really tested this, but I think in general it's better for horror games to never kill the player, because then you kind of like respawn. You're like, okay, that's the worst they can do to you. But there's one creature kind of cornered me and hurt me a lot, and I couldn't tell if I had fully recovered or not. And so the idea that I had like permanent damage for the rest of the gameplay from this encounter because I was too foolish or whatever is actually, I think, a really cool concept as a gameplay mechanic. I don't think that was what they intended, but that was what I was interpreting from that encounter. Another cool thing that Simon Jarrett can do for some reason is when he clicks certain comm modules or objects, he can hear conversations of the past about, said objects and persons. And yeah, you kind of, find the audio logs and the cursed, what happened story from all of the people screaming at the end of their logs and all that kind of stuff. And you kind of patch together different kinds of characters, the environment, the atmosphere, and the story of what happened. And so the underground facility is actually divided into 5 different areas after the Greek alphabet. And so you kind of go from facility to facility. There's a bunch of puzzles and stealth that you got to do to find some special item in there. And then you can go to the next facility. And of course, along the way, you're always upgrading your gear and stuff. And I think the most revealing part of the game is when it turns out that you, Simon Jarrett, are actually a robot and a machine. When you look at yourself in the mirror, that actually really took me aback because I don't know why. You start the game playing as human and you just assume that you were transported. And yeah, I know all this stuff about AI minds and other places, but when you actually see yourself and you actually see it's not even like a normal looking robot face. It's like these 2 red diodes that are like levitating by these very twitchy little like mechanical sticks. It was something that I was really just not expecting. It was kind of horrifying that like, oh, that was me. Again, a lot of times what they kind of do as a gimmick throughout this game is that you find a robot that has a human psyche inside of it, and essentially what you do is eventually destroy them or disable power. And it might be just things like, oh, the door won't open because they're drawing power for this person to be kept alive and their mental state to be suspended. And if you just remove that person's mind, then you can just progress through the door. It's just like flipping a switch and they're gone. And it's kind of like, did we kill that person? And they really have these conversations that are really like human and interesting. I'd say the dialogue and the characterization between these 2 characters is really, really well done. Because they kind of say, well, did we kill that person? And they kind of say, oh, well, I don't know, actually. And they would kind of ask philosophical questions and have little debates while you go through, the ship and whatever. And of course, Simon is kind of more emotional, while the other character is more rational. And she's a doctor and a scientist, so she's like, whatever, we just kill them. And this is a very cool, very nifty game. And honestly, I just don't approach it as a game. Approach it as a visual novel, and it gets a lot better because the gameplay is not It's not necessarily bad, but it's not necessarily good either. It's just there. And but believe me, the story is something that I have rarely seen, and it reminds me a lot of my favorite games stories from other mediums, of like my favorite, most intense, in-depth types of things and ideas. So anyway, that's pretty much Soma. I think it's worth a shot. And yeah, I'll see you later, guys. Bye.